And welcome to High Level Living with Michael Porche. I am your host, no co-host, just me. Yep, that's all you get today. Yes. So today we got a special guest, man. This guy is a rock star. He has built a multi-million-dollar company, started back in over, 7 years, I want to say. It was from 2012 to 2019 and absolutely destroyed it. It was a property management company. But not only from there, he started out as actually just being an airline pilot. And it's not just, right? That's a phenomenal type of industry to get in on. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of hours, as you know. But he was the second youngest at the time who entered into his airline. His name is Steve Rozenberg. He still is a commercial airline pilot today. Still likes to do it for fun and all that kind of stuff. But he also owns a coaching business where he takes people along the process to get them to be successful investors, but not just investors, but people. So he's really big about not identifying yourself as one thing. For example, him being an airline pilot and only can be an airline pilot, but he goes into depth about what it looks like to actually take the skills you learn and who you are and be able to apply it in different assets. So not just from us going into, hey, well, we want to go to Disneyland. Well, we're going to take a jet ski to Disneyland from Nevada. That's not going to work. He's always talking about, okay, what is the right vehicle that we're going to utilize in order to take us to the goal that we are looking to achieve and making sure that's correct. So I'm really excited for this show. Steve is a solid dude. He has a lot to offer. Definitely a go-doer. He is jacked as can be. And this guy will definitely give you the run for your money and be able to the kind of value that you have in this show as well, too. So I'm excited to bring him on. Let's jump into it. Yeah. Today, we got Steve Rozenberg on the show. Steve, thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to get down with you on this. You got a lot to unpack, and your story is so full of really a lot of just gold. I won't say gold nuggets, but just straight gold. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Look forward to chatting with you.
Awesome. So, hey, my first question, I'm just kind of getting right into it here. But my first question I'd love to start off with is, really, we both arrived in real estate, you and me. I know you don't know too much about my story, but we came from a completely different industry. Me with my firefighter background, you with a commercial airline pilot. But I love to kind of dig into that is, where did you see yourself as a commercial airline pilot? Why did you want to, or one, why did you go into that industry, and why did you leave?
Well, that's a deep question.
Yeah.
But I love that you get right into it. So let's do it. So I grew up in Los Angeles, born and raised, and I didn't know anybody that was a pilot, didn't have family members. I just remember as a little kid looking up in the sky and going, God, how does that work? Like, how do those things get from A to B? Where are they going? And just all that. It was just so interesting to me of how that worked. And so at one point in in high school, I was like, I want to be a pilot. Like, that's what I want to do. And so I didn't know what they made. I didn't know that there were airlines. Like, I just had no concept of it. So I started going to school to be a pilot, and I'm a pretty full throttle. I'm like first gear, seventh gear type person.
Yes.
So
yes.
I started going to school. I was going to school at the same time of building my flight hours, which most people, they do it hours first, then flight. They do school first, then hours. And I'm like, well, that's fucking stupid. Like, why don't I just do both? So I did both. So I ended up getting a job with a company. I was a senior in college, and I got a job with an airline. I got offered a job in the airline, and the company at the time was called TWA, Trans World Airlines. And they're out of St. Louis, Missouri. They're no longer around, but I didn't know what to do because I hadn't finished my degree, and I knew that you had to have a degree at some point in the hierarchy of getting a job. So I think, okay, I've got to figure this out. So I go to my professor and I'm like, hey, what do I do? He's like, you know what, Steve, in the airline industry, you take a seniority number and you go. He's like, you can always go to school via correspondence. I didn't even know what correspondence meant. So I'm like, fuck it. So I head off to St. Louis. I get my first job. I'm based out of St. Louis with TWA. And then as I was there for a while, I figured out correspondence was college through the mail. I had 1 year left. And of course, in college, you always take the cool stuff first and you save the hardest classes to the end.
Yeah.
So now via correspondence, I had to take statistics, calculus, economics. I'm like, this is And I literally had to have them sent to the school and they would proctor the test with me sitting in front of a teacher. I'm like, I can't even cheat off anybody. Like, this is horrible.
Wow. Wow.
I ended up doing it, got the whole deal, passed and all that stuff, got my degree. And then I went to what was more of a major airline, a bigger airline. And that you had to have the degree.
Yeah.
I got hired at 25 years old. I was the second youngest person hired by Continental Airlines at the time. Okay. So I would have retired number 2 in the seniority system. So imagine this. I'm 25 years old. I have the job of a lifetime. That's anything I ever wanted to do. It's all I've ever trained for. I had just gotten married. My wife and I moved to the island of Guam, which is out in the South Pacific.
Yep.
And Guam has a pilot base for Continental at the time. And I'm flying all over Asia, Australia. I mean, it was literally the dream scenario.
Wow. Wow.
And then 9/11 hit.
And
I realized 2 days after 9/11, which we all know, a tragedy that befell all of us. 2 days after the towers fell, I got delivered a furlough notice. And I was told, hey, Steve, thanks for playing, but we don't need you. And that safe and that secure job that you thought you had, it's not safe and it was never secure. And you're about to be on the street with 50,000 other pilots.
Wow.
So to say that you're obviously in shock from the trauma of the tragedies of 9/11, and then to just get punched in the face harder than you could ever imagine. I'm thinking to myself, I didn't do anything to cause this, but now I'm basically affected by this.
Yep.
And I realized, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? I go home to tell my wife that I'm not even qualified to drive a truck because all I know how to do is fly a metal tube around in the sky. I got to say, like, it is a very humbling thing. You got to really check your humility to go, what the hell am I going to do?
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing was I started learning about real estate because I looked to see what wealthy people did. I was like, what do people do that make money? Like, I had no idea. And everybody seemed to be tied to real estate. So I started reading a book a week on real estate. I read everything I could. Now, this is before YouTube. This 2001, 2002 for the listeners. I had to go to the library. I had to get a library card. I had to go to the library and I would have to check out books on real estate. And that's what you do, right? So I learned everything I could. I got some mentors. I started buying. I started flipping. I started wholesaling. 80% of everything that I did, I fucked up. I mean, I made mistakes. I got ripped off. I got lied to. And I just, you know what? I kept getting back up after I got knocked down because I didn't have a choice. Like, I had to figure this out.
Yeah.
And once I figured it out, it started to work for me. And I did very well through real estate. And that was my journey as a real estate investor. And I still own stuff. And we talked earlier about some mutual friends. But what I did after that is I took my knowledge and experience as an airline pilot, right? We're trained by Boeing and the airlines to be picture perfect, just like you are in your role, to checklist, systems, standardization, procedures. And I put that into a business. So I conceived, created, scaled, and eventually sold the fastest growing property management company in Texas at the time. Wow. And so we did all of this with the—
And what year was that?
That was from 2012 to 2019 is when we built the business.
Wow.
And so that's kind of another part of my life, another story, but that's what got me to understand all about how real estate really is just a business. It's just 4 walls and a roof. It's not real estate. It's not dirt. It's nothing. It's the business running inside of it. And I think one of the reasons so many people are interested in what I have to say is that I wasn't a property manager. I owned a business. I don't own real estate. I own businesses that produce cash flow. Those businesses just happen to be a bunch of houses. And so I look at things differently than the average. And so, mind you, I still am an airline pilot. I fly a Boeing 777 and a 787 for United Airlines. I fly all over the world. I love my job, but I also know it's a job and I know that it can be taken away and I don't need it. I love it. I love flying all over the world. To me, it's the best thing anybody could ever do, to have something that they love to do. To me, that's the dream life.
Wow. That's amazing. So there's a couple things on that I want to dive deep in. One, I'm going to get to later, which is probably a little more important. But two, I have a buddy of mine, Andrew. We really connected. He was actually, it's funny, really funny story. He was the second youngest to get hired with United Airlines as well, 25. And this was back in, wasn't that long ago. It was 2015, I believe, 2016. And he had the same thing happen to him when this whole COVID thing hit. There was in question whether or not if he was going to get furloughed. And then he started looking for other jobs, and he really kind of had this different shift. And I don't think he really took the bite in terms of like, maybe I should invest in something else, but he was also looking for another job. I know he loves this idea of real estate, hasn't really kicked in for him yet, in my opinion. But what I really loved about that, so now he's based out of Denver area, but he actually flies, I think. Well, no, he was flying the 787, but maybe something a little smaller now. But anyway.
What's funny is I get a lot of people when COVID hit and the airlines were shutting down, a lot of people reached out to me from different arenas and had me on podcasts because they knew I was a pilot and I'd done real estate and business and all that. And a lot of people would ask me, they said, "Steve, what's the difference between today and 20 years ago, or roughly about 20 years ago when 9/11 hit? Like, what's the difference for you?" I didn't grow another arm, right? Maybe I'm a little bit smarter. I tell people the key difference is that I took massive action. Yep. I did not even hesitate. It's kind of like that fight or flight, right? Yep. I'm telling you, man, I was full throttle through the wall. When you touch that hot stove and you know what it's like to go home and be like, I don't know what we're going to do. That is a very humbling situation. And when you know that someone else is in control of your own destiny, and with the swipe of a pen, they can take your life and turn it upside down. Most people are one or maybe two paychecks away from disaster. Yeah. And when you really think about that, I mean, this is the richest country in the world, and people live like they think they make all this money and they have this life, and it's an illusion. And I've learned, and look, I'm not putting anyone down. Anyone can live the way they want. I could give a shit. My thing is, at least be real with yourself. Like, I've been there. I know what it's like. I bought a lot of bad properties. I've been ripped off. I didn't blame anyone. I said, you know what? There's something that I got to do better. I need to be better at this. And I kept learning and learning. And look, I sold my company for well into 7 figures. I make a very strong income coaching and working with people, but it's because of my failures. It's because of those licks. When I see these other pilots and they ask me a question about what I did and who I am, and I published a book about my story, and they're like, yeah, I'm not really needing that. I'm like, you don't need it until you need it. And then when you need it, it's too freaking late. So you know what? I agree. You know what? Maybe you'll be fine. I mean, being an airline, there's nothing wrong with being I don't want to say just a pilot. Being a pilot is a very esteemed job.
It is.
But it's a job. And when the shit hits the fan, they're pointing their finger at you. And if there's someone to be fired and you're to blame, you're going to be fired. When you own your own business, you do what you want. So I have a different perspective. I love flying and I love being a pilot, but it's not who I am. I just do it because I enjoy it. That's
good. So there you said two good things I want to jump on real quick. Before I go to my first question, I was originally thinking of, I wanted to dive into the failure aspect. So you mentioned you went through a lot of failures and you went through a lot of different things. And as we all know, if you're not failing, you're not trying, and you're not really pushing yourself to the limit that you need to be in order to grow. But for you, I would ask is how do you ground yourself and stay focused on your goals, even after receiving some of those major setbacks, some of those obstacles and deviations from your original plan?
It's funny. That's a great question. I've never had anyone ask me that before that way. Look, if you are going through life and you are not failing, number one, you are either not trying hard enough or you don't understand the definition of failure. It's very simple, right? I have failed on monumental levels. I mean, I have lost a shit ton of money. Let me put it this way. I was so bad at buying properties. Me and my business partner, I think we had about 35 properties, shithole properties in the bad part of Houston. We kept buying them and I kept thinking, I can fix this. If I buy more, I can fix it. And I had this tunnel vision. And at the time, you don't think you're failing. You're just like, okay, I've got to fight. I got to figure this out. I'm not the dumbest guy. I'm not the smartest, but I'm not the dumbest. My wife finally told me, she goes, if you buy another one, it better be nice because you will be living in it because you suck at buying houses and you need to stop. And I was like, wow, maybe I do have I felt like an addict. Like I had a problem. And I was so, like when you're so focused on something, all of a sudden somebody pulls you back by the collar and they're like, what are you doing? And that was that moment for me. And honestly, I wish I could say that was this guiding light. We bought another 10 more fucking properties after that, which I have to move into, but we were smarter the next time. But once I built my business, one of the first things I did when we started our business, me and my business partner, is we got a business coach because we knew how to fuck things up. Like we knew we didn't know what we were doing. So we're like, okay, we're going to do this smart. So we go to a business coach and we're like, hey, this is what we're thinking. This is what we did. These were our mistakes. Is there something here? And he looks at it and we're like, we're going to manage people's properties. He's like, well, you've got marketability, you've got scalability, and there's opportunity. So by definition, you have the possibility of a business. You two guys are not the smartest people in the world, and you will be bankrupt in 6 months.
Ooh.
So we hire the guy on the spot because now we have a coach and we don't even know that we own a business, but we do.
Yep.
We took that business for the next 7 years, right? And every week we saw this guy. I mean, every freaking week we went to this guy and we got our asses kicked by him. But we built a multi-million-dollar company. We had over 1,000 properties in 3 cities. We had virtual assistants. 60% of our company was operating in Mexico. We learned how to scale and systematize our business that venture capital came looking for us and ended up buying us. But along those ways, that was riddled with failures. I mean, and one of our coaches, and I've had many coaches. I'm a big believer in being coached and being developed to be a better person. And one of the guys I never forget, I said, how do we get to your level? I mean, this guy had a 30,000 square foot house in Vegas while we're sitting in it, smoking cigars, drinking whiskey. And I'm like, how does this happen? I don't understand. He said, you know what? Let me give you some advice. He said, you need to fail faster and you need to fail more often and you need to get the fuck back up and you need to hit it again. And you got to fail and you got to get back up. And he goes, the day that you stop failing is the day that you stop growing. And I never forgot that.
Come on.
It's powerful, man. And it's like, the thing, here's what I learned is that people that are successful, they follow rules. They follow a recipe. It's like baking a cake, right? When you're going to bake a cake, there's a recipe to follow.
Yep.
You don't put the frosting on first and then put it in the oven. Yep. If you want to be successful in business or real estate or anything, look, there's nothing I do that is monumental. There's no sense to reinvent the wheel. The shit I do, I learn from other people. I coach people and I show them, look, just do this shit. Don't do that. You're going to be very successful. Yep. And so if you follow the recipe and don't let your ego and pride get in the way, you can be very successful. The problem is 6 inches, between our ears. That's what messes us up mostly.
Every time. Man, that was good. That was really, I knew I'd love this interview. So, okay. On that note, because you mentioned coaching, I know you have a coaching program that is dynamite from what I hear, but that's what people do. They come to you for coaching. They want to learn your secret sauce, their hidden techniques, tools, tactics, whatever. But to be honest, and this is what I know from my coaching program as well, is like not everything we teach is purely related to real estate. We often need to give general work and life advice overall for them to understand, like, hey, you have to actually implement these like work habits, right? Like actual good work habits. But also is this something that you've reflected on? Is there a general thought process or skill that you would say, hey, you need to have this down in order to be successful or to understand? And is there anything that you would like maybe screen your coachees, if you will, or people who want to join your program, for them to have a specific habit before they do?
So you said a lot in there. I just want to kind of unpack a little bit.
Yes.
Just kind of re-clarify. I'm a big believer that I don't think real estate is a tool. It is a strategy. It's like going into your toolbox and deciding, am I a hammer today? Am I a rake? Am I a brush? Am I using real estate? Or is it stocks? Is it intellectual property? Am I building a business? These are just tools. So many people identify themselves, and I think this is a mistake. They identify themselves as, I am a real estate investor. Well, to me, that's like saying I'm a rake. A rake has a job. A piece of real estate is 4 walls and the roof. I know many people, and I was one of them, that will buy a piece of real estate and they can run it right into the ground. When I first started, I did that many times. And then I know other people that will take that same property, put a different type of model into it, maybe short-term rentals, maybe long-term, maybe a flip, and they make money with it. And I'm like, why is it that I couldn't make money on it, but you could? And the answer, and I had a guy that actually did this. We went to closing. We had to bring money to closing. We just wanted to dump this trash property and get it off of our hands. The guy was happy because he got a great deal. We were happy because it was no longer our problem.
Yep.
About a year later, we knew him, and I said, hey man, how's that deal on Mohawk? He's like, oh man, it's making me a killing. I'm like, the one I sold you? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you got to be shitting me. There's no way. And he's like, dude, you had the wrong business model. You didn't understand what you had. Obviously, right? So my point is I learned a term when I was being coached, and I tell people this all the time. And for those of you watching and listening, you should write this down. It's BE times do, DO equals have. So B times do equals have. What does that mean? And again, I don't know who invented this. One of my coaches, Brad Sugars, taught this to me, and I don't know if he stole it from someone else. I'm not sure. But a lot of people will say, Steve, how do I have your life? How do I have the things that you have? I will do whatever it takes. If I have to work 7 days a week, I will do that. Okay. I get that.
Right.
What they're missing is the first part of that equation. It's the B. You have to become a different person to have the life that I have. Absolutely. So for example, like the pilots, right? Pilots want to have a certain life, but they're not willing to change who they are. I coach people all the time. I tell them, I say, listen, if you want to have a $10 million business, but you're a $100,000 CEO, it's never going to happen. Yeah. You have not become that person. So when I coach people, I coach them more on who they have to become. Because look, I tell people all the time, I could get you 10 properties tomorrow. I can make connections. I can make 5 phone calls, and I can have you those deals. But are you ready for those deals? Are you mentally prepared to run it like a business? Because look, any type of business that you own, real estate, flipping, whatever it is, it's a business. You've got to have marketing. You've got to have sales. You have to have operations. You have to have accounting, right? There's a chassis that runs under, whether it's United Airlines, Chevrolet, Doritos, doesn't matter. We are all a business. Most people do not understand the fundamentals of that business. More importantly, they don't understand what is their job role in that business. Yeah. And so they spend more time on, I call it the strategy being real estate, the tactic being a house, right? So they focus on the strategy, they focus on the tactic, but they don't understand the goal of where they're going. I'll give you an example. Let's say you and I live in Los Angeles and we say, we're going to go to LA, right? So let's say we land at the airport. Let's use this. So we land at the airport in LA. We're like, hey, we're going to go to Disneyland. Okay. Well, Disneyland is the goal. We want to be at Disneyland at 3 p.m. on Friday. A goal has to have a time date and a destination to make that happen. So most people, number one, when they get into real estate, they don't have a goal, they don't have a timestamp, and they don't have a date that it's going to happen that's quantifiable. Yes. Okay? So that's the first thing. They don't know where they're going. Right. So then I say, okay, we're going to take the 405 to the 105 to the 91 to the 5 freeway. We're going to exit Disneyland Drive. That is the strategy. That's like saying I'm going to have 2 buy and holds. I'm going to have 1 flip. I'm going to do a short term. All of these ways are going to get me to Disneyland. So when I coach people and they'll say, hey, Steve, should I buy this house? My question is does that get you to your goal? Does that take you to Disneyland? Okay. So for example, if you got on the 405 freeway in Los Angeles and you had a snowmobile, you have the wrong tactic to get there. It's not going to get you there. So that's like, okay. So the tactic is the medium you're going to use, meaning the house, the apartment, the condo, the mobile home. So many people focus on the tactic and they focus on the freeway, but they don't know where they're going. And more importantly, they don't know how they're going to get off the freeway. They don't have an exit strategy to get off. So it's like getting on the 405 freeway. You're supposed to go 405 south. They get on 405 north and they're just driving. And I'm like, where are you going? They're like, I don't know, but I'm just driving because I'm doing real estate. And I'm like, you're going to run out of gas. And that's what happens to investors. They run out of gas because they don't have a destination.
That is exactly right. That's one of the first things I do. In fact, in our coaching program, that's the first thing we do is, hey, you have to identify what your vision is. And of course, we do it the whole SMART format as well. So that's specific, measurable, attainable, I believe it is. Result driven and time bound. So that's you need to get that specific as possible. I have them write it down on a piece of paper. And then from there, it's like, okay, then the next thing, establish your buying criteria that's going to help achieve that goal. Because otherwise, if you're not, because they'll spend all day, well, I want to do this or that or this or that. And then they jump around all these decisions because they have so much maybe information overload and they want to analyze everything. And okay, there's a certain point to where we analyze and then we just have to take action.
Exactly. And I'll give you a quick example when it comes to the end date. I've had, let me give you this example. I'm sitting at the bar. One of the guys, he ended up being my coach, but he was a very high level speaker at the time, still is. And we're sitting at the bar. He just finished this big presentation in front of a couple thousand people. And I just happened to be sitting next to him. We're shooting the shit, drinking some whiskey. And he says to me, he says, Steve, when's the date? And I'm like, date for what? He goes, when's the date you sell your business? And I just listened to this guy talk about creating generational wealth. You know, you build a business, it lasts forever. And he's going on and on. And so I'm thinking, oh man, this is a test. I'm going to let him know that I paid attention. Right. So I'm like, oh, like Brad, I'm not going to sell my business. Like this is generational wealth. And I went through this whole fucking bullshit thing, trying to impress him. And he sat there and he looked at me, he said, you don't get it, which obviously I didn't. So now I'm getting a little more uncomfortable in the conversation. He goes, the reason you have to have a sale date is because if you don't put a finish date on your product, it's never completed. If your product is never completed, it's not a saleable asset, which means it does not operate without you. If your business does not operate without you with a final date, you don't own a business, you own a job.
That's right.
I'm like, okay. So he says, so give me a date. So our business was like 3 years old, right? We're doing good, but we're not anywhere that we think ever thinking of selling. Our goal is never to sell. And I'm like, so this is like 2016 or something. I don't know. And I said, I don't know. I go 2020. Now I'm thinking, why the fuck did I sit next to this guy? Right. So I'm like 2020. He's like, 2020 is not a date. I want a date. I want a month. I want a date. You know, I'm like, oh my God, this guy's killing me. Right.
So I go.
So I'm like, February 1st, 2020. Like, I'm just thinking, I just want to get this freaking thing over with. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
He goes, pull out a napkin and write it down. So I'm like, okay. So I take it. I pull out a napkin. I write it down. We sold our business 6 months of that date.
Wow. That's powerful.
Our goal was never to sell. That was never the plan. Don't ask me how, why, what. That's what happened.
That's powerful, man. That's awesome. So dang, that's real cool. And I would love to know, because for me, people always ask me this, you know, has your job as a fireman, you know, the structure that you saw there, did it translate into your investing I guess, journey or into that space? And I'm like, well, I always say the quick answer is yes. Yes, it has. But to be honest, a lot of the most fruitful things I've learned in the firehouse, I really had to readopt and relearn and reapply, because it was something I just thought would be a completely different asset. But the reality is, in order for something to maybe work well, there's a framework. And that framework was what I translated into my business. And that had to do with accountability, always having there to be something along the lines of, you know, a really quick how-to, you know, template, have there being procedures, SOPs, the culture, even the framework of a culture. But I want to ask the same for you in your business as working for the airlines and having maybe certain habits that come from there. Was there frameworks that you applied from there that you applied immediately? Was it something that was pretty easy like that? Or did it take some time?
It definitely took time. I didn't realize what I knew until I applied it into a different genre, right? So I used to compartmentalize a lot of stuff where I was like, okay, when I'm flying, I'm flying. And when I'm in real estate, I'm in real estate. When I have my business, I'm in my business. And I started understanding a lot of crossover with checklists and standardization and procedures. And I was like, and this is between me and my business partner, who's not in the airline industry. But I'm like, you know, in the airlines, we do this. And we have a checklist. And this is how I'm trained from Boeing to run a checklist. And we started running checklists and systemization the way that I'm taught. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, this is interchangeable, right? And all of a sudden it was like, not only was it helpful, it was imperable. It was vital that we did utilize it. Because what I've learned is when you are in high growth mode, which we were, 50% of your people and 50% of your systems are going to break. As a leader, it's your job to see before they break and try to patch them, replace them, fix them with either technology, staffing, or new systems. Or when they do break, that was our job. Our job was not to push people out of the way. Our job as leaders is to utilize that. So, you know, I'm sure you guys as firefighters, you have your way of dealing with emergencies, right? When there's an emergency, and obviously the definition of emergency, I tell people all the time, you may think that when a client doesn't pay you or a contractor owes you money, that's an emergency. For me, having an engine catch on fire at 40,000 feet with 350 people on board over the Pacific Ocean, I would say that's an emergency. I would not qualify your emergency as the same level.
Yeah, totally.
But here's what's interesting. The way we handle emergency is much different than the way you handle emergency, Mr. Investor on the ground. And I guarantee you that if you handled it the way we are trained as pilots to handle emergencies, your success rate, just like our success rate is, very high. So it is very, it is very relatable. Can I share a quick story that may put it together for you? So, and I want you and your listeners to do this next time. And it's when I tell it, it's going to mean a lot. So next time you go to the airport, everybody's flown or fly somewhere, and you go to the airport and you see an aircraft coming up to the gate. Okay. Now the plane I fly is a Boeing 777. It weighs 600,000 pounds and it holds 350 people. It's like, basically it's an apartment complex with wings. Okay. When this aircraft comes up to the gate, most people just see a flurry of people running around doing shit around the plane. You've got the baggage handlers pulling out bags and cargo. You've got 350 people getting off the aircraft, right? You've got cleaners cleaning the aircraft, and you've got catering, recatering. Flight attendants are doing all their safety checks. Maintenance is walking around the aircraft, checking oil, engines, tire, wings, all that. Pilots, we're up in the flight deck. We're checking weather, destination, safety items, all that stuff.
Yep.
They hook up the fuel valves. 230,000 pounds of fuel is hooked up and pushed into that plane. 350 people get back on that aircraft, and all of their bags and cargo are loaded. All of this happens inside of 1 hour.
Wow.
And none of us had to talk to another person because we all knew our job.
That's right.
So when you think about that, that is the quintessential perfect business model. And so when I work with people, I ask them, we call it in the industry, it's called the dance, right? We call it the dance. My question to business owners is, what's your dance? You have one when you get a new client, when you get a new property, when you're dealing with maintenance. There's multiple dances going on, but is it like a rave mosh pit, or is it this orchestrated dance? And so if you look at the air now, and remind you, this could be in Tokyo, Japan, Sydney, Australia, Los Angeles, Denver, London, England. It all is exactly the same. We never have to worry about the other person doing their job because we have systems that protect us from mistakes, because people make mistakes, but the systems are set up to catch our fatal errors. And so I tell people, when you build your business, and so this, going back to what you asked me about this, my airline industry, is your business needs to be systems dependent, not people dependent. Look at the airlines and look how systems dependent they are. And I mean, look at our success rate of flights. I mean, it's nothing insane. Parallels us. So when you look at that as a business, you got to imagine, like, holy crap, man, like that's a pretty awesome way to run a business.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's awesome. That was a really good story. And there's something, and not really related, but something I definitely wanted to dive into, because it's something that I feel you hold pretty close to. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the same person you married when you first got into the airlines, that's who you're currently married to with now. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Unless you know something I don't, but yes.
No. So, man, there is a lot that goes in with your married partner, and some people will say they're either the cheerleader or they're in the game with you. Some say it's kind of like a mix of both. But how would you describe your relationship with your wife, and how has that really attributed to where you're at now and your success and your business, everything?
It's funny. My wife is the biggest anti-social media person. She's not on any social media channels, doesn't want to. She barely uses her phone to text message. Everything's written on paper. But she's an engineer by trade. So very, very intelligent. She understands. She's more interested in the numbers, not the story of the business.
Interesting.
What are the numbers? How much revenue did the business create this year? The coaching business, the real estate business, whatever it is I'm doing. So she's more involved in the numerical side of the interest. Now,
really?
But as far as her traveling with me to speak, she doesn't really care to do that, but I travel for a living. So, I mean, we travel a lot on our time off. So she's like, why would I go to, San Francisco for one day when we can go for a week on our own?
Yeah.
It's hard to argue with that, or she'll come on the backside of a trip once I'm done speaking, and then we'll hang out. So, she, as far as the involvement, it's really not much, because look, I'm an airline pilot. I'm here doing these podcast shows. I'm doing this. We have an 18-year-old son. Somebody has to run the household, really. I mean, when you think about it. So that she basically takes care of all the infrastructure of shit that's got to go on in the house and in the taking care of the bookkeeping with the bookkeepers and all that stuff. So hers is more of a numerical side of what I do. But I will say something real quick though, if I may, and this is when I coach people, especially a husband and wife. A lot of times, look, if you're doing real estate or something, not always is the wife wanting to be involved. And I get that. And nor should she if she doesn't want to. What I do suggest is that a husband and wife create a board of directors meeting. The board of directors is an upper level meeting that you have maybe once a month or once a quarter. What you do in the board of directors meeting is this is where you have high level, high income activity conversations. This is when you go over the P&L statement, your balance sheets, your forecasting for the year, the goals. And the meeting is not to fix things, it's to discuss them. So many times you'll get into this, conversation of, well, we're doing this. That is not the time. It's just to report the numbers. Like if I was on your board of directors, I'm not asking for excuses. I just want the information. We're off track this month. This is where the numbers were supposed to be. This is where we are. This is what I'm doing to fix them. I'll let you know next month if we're fixing them or we have to readjust our numbers. Okay. So if you do this, I recommend that you do this at a neutral place. Don't do it at your house. Don't, go away, put your phones away, bring the P&L statements, bring the numbers and start getting used to running it like a business. That will help take the emotional, he said, she said in between dinner conversation. We don't discuss that. And if she or he has something to say or a question, I recommend they each get a notebook, board of directors, write it in the notebook, and then discuss it at the board of directors meeting. Do not discuss it because that's how things start crisscrossing in relationships and you don't know where those lines are drawn.
That's good. That's good. So, and how often would you say, does that kind of meeting need to happen for it to be effective, just for you to be in alignment with your wife, for example?
Especially
how important is that?
If you're getting started and you're doing a shift, maybe you're going from a regular career to real estate, or you're getting into it. I would suggest monthly. And then once it's up and running, then maybe quarterly is probably good. Once it's an actual business running, operating. But in the beginning, especially when you're getting started and you're buying deals, or you're looking at real estate and you're looking at numbers, I would suggest monthly is a very good time to do that. And again, you just got to make sure, you almost sit on your hands so that you're not writing things down that, well, this or that way. It's like, you know what? That's good. Let's note it. We'll fix it at the next meeting. I'll give you a report. So, that's the good time. But monthly is good. If it's quarterly and you're just starting, I think there's too much lag time personally.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, because obviously when you're climbing up a hill or you start driving, you're putting a lot more gas just to get started than you will to coast when you're already.
Absolutely. 80% of rocket fuel is taken just in the first booster to get it to the first atmosphere.
Exactly. Well, hey man, I would love to actually touch base on another factor, and that has to do with your growth and how you grew your company, your property management company, so quickly. But before I dive into that, because I wanted to make sure I stated it just so we don't forget about it. Before we get into that, so you talked a lot about, those say board meetings that you're talking about with your wife, family, whoever you're doing your business with. I think that is so key. It's revolutionary because it's people being on the same page. But what would you say in regards to, because obviously alignment with your wife is very important, but how do you handle, say, those disagreements, when they come up? How is there a process that you will go through with your wife, or do you bring a process that you go through with your business partners?
Absolutely. First of all, and let me say, if you have a business partner, when you have these board of directors meetings, both spouses should be at the meeting also, because normally it's not the partners that are chirping in the air. It's the spouse of the partner. This is where you have a conversation. So look, there people can have, the biggest challenge in partnerships, whether it's a husband and wife or two business partners, is they don't set the expectations in the beginning. So whenever I'm in a coaching session, or I get someone that says, hey, I'll do what's called an alignment session, where two business partners and their spouses will all come in. And I have the conversation of, okay, what is the expectation of this business? Like, what is the goal of the business? To buy real estate. Well, that's a stupid goal. That doesn't mean anything. That's like saying I want to get on the freeway. What is the goal of the business? Vehicle. When does that happen? So then they figure out what the goal is. Okay, who's doing what role? So this goes into your question about running the business, right? Because it's a business. Who's doing what role, right? You have marketing, you have sales, you have operations, you have accounting. tell me in the organization chart, which you will have, who is doing what roles. If they don't know, well, then you can't start until you know what players are going to be on the field. Now, you may be wearing all the hats. Next question is what is your role, investor A, and what is your role, investor B? What is your strength? What is your weakness? Let's make sure that we're complementing. You got two losers that don't know what they're doing. It doesn't make a winner. Yeah. Right. So I'm like, if you guys both don't know what you're doing, like, we should partner up. I'm like, that's fucking stupid. Like, why would you do that? Like, you're both going to lose your money the faster way that way. Like, if you don't have the, some people are like, well, I'm doing all the deals, I'm putting in the money, so he's going to do all the work. I'm like, that's going to last for about 2 deals. And he's going to be like, fuck this. I'm not doing that. Like, I don't need your money. It may work for 1 deal. So again, time expectations. How much time are you expecting me to be involved in this business? Is it, I've had people before where they're like, yeah, he's going to spend his every day of his week. And the guy's like, no, I'm not. I'm only going to spend 2 hours a week. It's like, I didn't know that. Well, I didn't know that all of a sudden. But the next thing, this is the biggest thing. And this is what nobody discusses. What happens if 2 business partners have to divorce? Meaning we don't get along. I fucking hate you. We own 5 houses together. How do we split the assets? Yeah. That's something that's never discussed. And how do you handle a cash call? Businesses need cash. Sometimes they need a cash infusion. Who's going to put the cash call in? Yep. And the thing is people don't discuss this, and then they wait until it's needed, and then it's nuclear. Yep. And you're like, no wonder you guys don't get along. You didn't have the discussion. So I'm a big believer in having these discussions. So, and if you want, I'll segue into our business. The way we grew our business so fast, is that we had these meetings. My business partner and our spouses, we had these board of directors meetings. And at first, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're just like, well, I'm not sure why we're here. Like, let's look at the numbers. Well, they suck, but okay, So you don't know until you start getting that rhythm, right? Yeah. Well, what we did is we were very, very fortunate. My business partner and I, we are almost polar opposite. We're good friends. We're still good friends to this day, but he and I are polar opposite. I am the pie in the sky. We are going to kill it. He is like, the sun is going to give us cancer and we need to get in the shade. Right. Wow. Yeah. But that is, if you ever read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, he talks about the visionary and the integrator. Yep. The visionary is the guy who's up front. He's making big deals. He's shaking hands. He's kissing babies. He's having relationships with all these different people. And he's the guy. Yeah. The integrator is the one who puts these deals together. He's the architect of the business. He's making sure all the systems work, all the processes. Yep. In our business, I was the visionary. He was the integrator. I did what I did. He did what he did, and we never crossed lanes. We never, I don't want to say never. I mean, we had those fuck you conversations, but in general, we never did. But we would have the conversations of, number one, the business needs to live on its own without us. It's not us. It's not our ego. It's not our pride. The business gets paid first. The employees get paid. The vendors get paid. We've got to take care of the team. We've got to feed the team. Come on. That was just how, not saying everyone does it that way. That's how we did it. Right. Yeah. And so we always made sure that we had the vision of the company and where we were going. We didn't pay the most, but we had the most dedicated employees because they believed in us and they believed in what we were doing. And they're like, you know what? We will run through the fucking wall if we have to for you, because we believe that you are doing this for our future. And we were. Yeah. And, we were just those people that we did it. And I didn't have to wonder if he was doing his thing. He didn't have to wonder if I was doing my thing. We always worked because we stayed in our lanes. And we never crossed paths. I was in charge of sales and marketing. He was in charge of operations and accounting. And that's how we ran the business. And it was very, very successful that way because we ran our business based on KPIs and metrics and not based on gut feelings and reactions and emotions.
Dude, and that's where it's at, man. That is literally the common theme I hear and pretty much in all of our discussion has been consistency and being very specific and knowing what you want, knowing what you're doing. Everyone knows what they're doing, when they're doing it, how they're doing it. I mean, just that really clear illustration you use and how you're able to have a plane enter and get ready to leave all within 1 hour is very clear. Everyone knows what they're doing, how they're doing it, when they're doing it. Don't have to communicate to one another until it's necessary, but it's already all taken care of.
And think about this, as a firefighter, you guys probably have a dance. Who's getting the hose? Who's getting the you're not just like, very hey, what clear. Are you doing? Hey, go grab that shit. It's like, I've got a friend of mine, and he's a ex Navy SEAL, and he's like, man, like that is ingrained in us. Like it's not like, hey, what do you want to do today? What do you feel like? Like, hey, is it Tuesday? Do I load the bags, or is that your role? We're in London, so I think that's you. You don't even like when you think of being a firefighter, you never even think of doing something else because you have a job to do. And more importantly, and this is the biggest challenge that I see, one of the biggest challenges with business owners and real estate investors is when you don't know what you should be doing, you start meddling in other people's business and you start fucking pushing people out of the way. And like, I'll do that or I'll do that. That's the worst thing you can do. People do not understand the difference between leadership and management. Yep. And they think that they're being a leader when they're being a horrible manager. And they don't understand. And I talked to owners. I was flown out to Australia and I worked with a big franchise out there. And, you know, the reason he flew me out there was he wanted me to work with his low level performing franchisees because they weren't producing. He didn't know what to do. So I went out there and I'm like, so when you have employees, you expect them to do their job, right? And he's like, yeah, one of the guys. And he's like, yeah, I do. I said, so if they don't do their job, what happens? And he's like, well, they get written up. I mean, what happens again? And they get written up. What happens again? Well, then they get fired. I'm like, so who holds you accountable? And he's like, what do you mean? I go, who makes sure you're doing your job? And he's like, well, nobody. I'm the owner. I'm like, that's the problem. You are the one who needs to be fired because the fish stinks from the head down. And if you look at bad employees, it's probably due to bad leadership. And you don't even know what leadership is because you don't even understand the concepts of it. So again, to me, it all stems from the top. And so many people, they get into real estate. They just think it's four walls and a roof. They don't understand that they have to build a business and they have to learn how to be a leader. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think another common theme within a lot of what you speak, what you talk about is accountability. I hear that a lot. And so like, what would you say? I have a question. Well, I'm wondering, who holds you accountable? That's a good question. So my wife and my assistant holds me accountable. That's good. And honestly, look, I'm not saying that I am the perfect person, but I'm a very driven person. And I hold myself to a very high degree, but that's not really acceptable, right? You can't just say, you can't make your own rules, right? I put my stuff out there to my assistant, to other people. They know. And at the end of the day, I tell people all the time, like, I don't do it to brag. I do it to hold myself accountable. So if I put it out there of how much money I want to make this year, or what do I want to accomplish, or what do I want to do? It's not that I'm bragging. It's that once you put it out there, well, now you got to step up to the plate and make it happen. And I tell people all the time, and you know, when I coach people, I'm like, nobody cares. Like nobody cares about your problems. Nobody cares. You work harder. I don't give a shit. Like I don't care what your problems are. You know, when I coach people, I tell them, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to make you successful. There's a difference. Right. And part of that is being your friend by telling you stop doing stupid shit. And so I am all about doing everything I can to get people to that next level. I mean, I get up at 4 a.m. every day. I go to the gym, right? I'm at the gym at 5 a.m. That's my deal, right? I don't post it on social media. I don't, that's not my deal. Like I do it because that's what I do. That's who I am. That's what identifies me. And so I think a lot of people, they don't understand what accountability is. And again, I'm not better than anybody. I need to get the kick in the ass too, just like everyone does. Yep. But a lot of people just don't understand what that means to be accountable, I think.
That's good. That's good. So you mentioned something about going to the gym, 4 a.m. So how does the role of, I'd say in your life, physically and spiritually, what does that look like? Do you have like a spiritual life on the side? Is there meditation involved? Do you have faith? And physically, I mean, obviously you're in shape, you look nice and strong, but where is that important? I mean, obviously I'd say it's important to you, but is that important to you? Why is it important to you?
So that's a good question. So I believe there's three things in life, right? Your life is like a three-legged stool. You have health, you have wealth, and you have relationship. Okay. Yeah. And if one of those is off, the stool's not going to stand. Right. Now, I am not a believer. I don't believe in the concept of a balanced life. I don't think it exists. Right. You wouldn't want me flying and landing a 777 aircraft while at the same time talking to you about real estate or learning how to juggle. I'd go, yeah, but I'm balanced. Like I'm working and I'm having a good time. You're going to go, no, fly the plane. And then after you fly the plane, then you can go and juggle. Right. You'd feel more counterbalance. Yeah. So I believe in focus, intention, and then pivot like a boat. Like if you're in a boat and a sailboat, you're going one way, then pivot. Okay. So with that being said, the way my day works, I'll just give you an example of my typical mornings. My wife laughs at me because it takes me like an hour to get out of the house. She's like, I don't know what you do. Like, what are you doing? Like, just get up and go to the gym. I'm like, I can't. So I get up in the morning, every single morning. I have a notebook I pull out my notebook. I write my I am statements. So I ams are like affirmations. I write a whole page of them every single day. I rewrite them every day. I take the ones from the day before. I rewrite them every day. That's what I do. Right. That's the first thing I do. Second thing I do is I will write my 3 goals for wealth, health, and relationship for the quarter. What do I want to achieve in health? What do I want to achieve in wealth? What do I want to achieve in relationship? And then what's one thing that I need to do today to achieve that quarterly goal? Like, what's just one thing I got to do? Just one thing. Okay. Like maybe for income, maybe it's be on this podcast show to expand my influence. Doesn't have to be super dynamic. Could just be one thing I'm doing. Same thing with health, same thing with relationship. Then I take that one thing and I move it to the next, which is my daily calendar. So I take my daily calendar and I write down all the things I have to do. These are must do's. Like my day doesn't end until I get these things done. So I write those down, right? That's my list today. Then I take those and I put them in my phone for my calendar. So now they're blocked off in my phone. Then I'll read 10 pages. If I have time, this is where I kind of slack a little, I'll be honest, is I try to meditate. But I think I do it backwards because by this time my mind is racing, right? I'm already thinking of all the shit I got to do today. I'm like, man, I got to get to the gym. I got to, so as soon as I have the hour, as soon as I'm done with that, then I go to the gym. I work out for 2 hours, just about 2 hours every day. Then I come home. I'm there from 5 to 7, home by 7:30, and then I start my day. And that's kind of the way my day works. And that's every single day. And I tell people all the time, it's like people like, I don't know how you do it. My analogy is it's like a fish doesn't know it's in water until it's not in water. That's just what I'm just in water. This is what I do every day. I'm a firm believer in creature of habit. And it's not that it's hard to do. It's just a matter of prioritizing what's important. And I did a training day. I was fortunate enough. AJ, our buddy AJ was there too with Echelon Front with the Navy SEAL team with Jocko and those guys. And one of the things they said, which I thought was so valuable, they said, when you say like, I don't have time today or this and that, he said, just say, it's just not that important for me to do.
That's exactly
just
right.
Say that. So when you say like, I don't have time to see my kid, just say, it's just not that important for me to spend time with my kid today. He's like, it's true. You're just trying to mask it. And that really was that to me. I was like, oh shit, man. Like that's legit. Like, but it's so true. Like when people tell me like, I don't have time to go to the gym, like just say it's not important for you to be in shape. Just say it. And they're like, well, this sounds like bullshit. Like you don't even have the balls to say it.
That's the reality.
It really makes you think about life and perspectives of doing that. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's how I run it.
Oh, no, absolutely does. I mean, I'm definitely a creature of habit. I wake up usually around 3:30 a.m. almost every day. Sometimes I'll do 4:30 if I go to bed a little later, but I need that time for myself. I do my own thing. I go through my own rituals, if you will. And I'm usually at the gym and I take a couple more hours because I like to get like more of my important things done that I need to get done in the beginning of the day because it's quiet. It's time. My wife and my daughter hasn't woken up yet. And I usually go to the gym around 6:30 and I'm there till about 8. And then that's it. And then I get to spend that emotional love time with my wife and my daughter. And I enjoy that. They're up, they're happy. I got all of my energy out because I'm a high energy guy. And then I do work up until about noon. And then the rest is just meetings, so it's usually pretty consistent like that every single day. But you got to live in some way, shape or form in that kind of format, I think, if you're really going to be. Yeah,
I completely agree. You got to have consistency. And I'll be honest, a lot of people, people think I'm odd. Maybe I am, but I'll fly 15 hours to Asia. As soon as I land, I go to the gym and work out. To me, it's. And when I come back, like all my shit is in my car that when I land at the airport, I change, I go right to the gym as soon as I land. People are like, we've been flying all night. I'm like, it's just another 2 hours. I'm like, come on. By the time I get home, I'm already tired. Why not just get the workout in? So I don't give myself the option. The trigger for me is I land, I've already got my shit and my drinks are already ready to go. I just got to pour water in them. I drink them, I slam them on the way and I'm at it. And I'm like, people like, you just worked out in, Rio de Janeiro yesterday. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm freaking working out today. Like, that's what I do.
Man, that's right there.
That's, you don't, it's just, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. That's just how I am. That's just the way I'm made.
Dude, I feel you on that. Absolutely. And even now, like right now, I injured my back. I was doing some Olympic lifting 3 days ago. I was really not injured. I just reignited an old injury from the department. But, even in that, I know what I can and can't do right now, but I'm still moving in other areas to where I can still get, some exercise in, some time in, even though I'm not as comfortable sitting down. But anywho, dude, Steve, it was so nice to get to hear your story on the actual level perspective from you to me. That was really cool.
Yeah, I look, man, I appreciate it. I love telling my story, hoping that I can help other people. I mean, look, I'm no different than anyone else, just a few years ahead of them.
Yeah.
And if I can help and I can save someone the pain and struggle, that's my job, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. So real quick for our listeners, how can they reach you? How can they invest in your coaching program? Where do they go for that?
Yeah, so the easiest place is probably my website, and they can reach out to me. It's my name, Steve Rozenberg. So it's ROZENBERG.com, steverozenberg.com. I'm on all the social media channels. If you reach out to me, I will respond. It's really me. And I get a lot of people, I think that may be how you and I met, but a lot of people reach out to me. Can I ask you a question? I got this, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm a big believer in making sure that I do all I can to help out as much as possible. So reach out to me, and I'm happy to chat with you about the different programs that I have and go from there.
Awesome. We'll have all those listed in the show notes as well. Once again, Steve, dude, it was awesome to have you on. Love to hear your story, your drive, your ambition to live life to its fullest in every single aspect, which is something that I love being able to see in people, not just, and what you said too about identity, right? You're not just an airline pilot. You're not just an investor. And I think that comes down to really you are who you're created to be in that. And you're able to put that same framework into different aspects of your life. And you can see that from doing it on a business, financial standpoint, a physical standpoint, a relational standpoint. And those are some beautiful things.
Glad to help, man. And I hope this was valuable to your listeners. And I was able to at least get them to think a little bit differently about what they're doing and some thoughts that they're making.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, thanks for being on the show.